Now, as I understand, you started off your career in a family business.
Yeah.
And then pivoted to broadcasting, TV, sports, so on and so forth.
Point one, I was the chairman of a local football club in our community in Homestead Park. Point B, community radio was just starting up in the middle 90s, with democracy starting. So up to that size, there was no community radio. It was just radio, national TV. Community radio did not exist, right?
You touched on this a little bit, but in the sense of the future, what is your vision for Champion South Africa?
The step is, we're not a political party. We don't want to be. We're not interested in that space. And we're not the ones who are civil society is going to drum up support in public spaces. It's for other people. But we see ourselves as a think tank of change, a think tank that would inspire what I call champion thinking. So in everything you do, can you make the switch to champion thinking? Because if you make the switch to champion thinking in your mind, then you're already setting a target of being a champion in your space. Now, why are we at that? So that's the part. Then to have events, because we planned to do some events before. Then COVID struck. Before you know it, 3-4 years just gone, right?
Gone, yeah.
But this is critical for me, and I can't not say this before we end this conversation. When we ask people like, how are you driven? You see, people are motivated short term when they just inspired in the moment to say, come on, just clap and whatever, right? But the reality is, if you find your purpose, you'll always be motivated, because then there's no such nonsense as Blue Monday. How can you have a Blue Monday when you have a purpose? How can you have a Blue Monday when you have a goal? Because if you have a goal and you decide, well, today's Blue Monday, so I'm effectively chilling, right? You've robbed yourself of one day. And how can you have a purpose and then wait for, TGIF, thank God it's Friday? It's a contradiction. Every single day of the 7 days are really important for you to develop your purpose. And your purpose is not your job. The job is a result of your purpose. You make the decision of where you work based upon whatever your purpose is. Now, but this is important. So when we talk about personal purpose, it's developing the person, right? And often I say champion people, so it's the person. But the key part missing in our country, and I give talks on this, if we say, what's your personal purpose? I can imagine all the people, my personal purpose is this, all they like, what is my personal purpose? But if I ask you, what is the national purpose? What is South Africa's national purpose today? I can tell you now, you don't know.
No.
And the good news or bad news is I don't know either. And nobody else watching us knows it. What is our national purpose? We have a national plan, we have some goals, we have no clear national purpose. In fact, that probably tells you why there was a need for a national dialogue, because there is no national purpose, right? So a national purpose is a galvanizing force that people sort of surround themselves around and they make decisions. So let me help you understand what that means. In the 1980s, South Africa's national purpose was end apartheid. It's very clear.
Yeah.
It was clear, intentional, end apartheid. In 1994, the national purpose was nation building. Around 2006, up to 2010, our national purpose was the 2010 World Cup. Yeah. Everything we did centered around the World Cup. Even building the Gautrain was a World Cup issue,
World Cup initiative,
for example. So can you see with those three examples how your national purpose, once you identify it, becomes a galvanizing force in a country? Now, since 2010, subsequent to that, what is our national purpose? And before someone says it's fight corruption, no. Fighting corruption is the result of a greater national purpose. And then fighting corruption would be something that you do as a result of that. Now, right now, we're struggling with identifying what our national purpose is. And I've said so before, if there's nothing else that comes out of the national dialogue, but for them to identify a need for a national purpose, a rallying, switched-on slogan that we rally behind, we would have done well if we did nothing else. But this is the important part. Even without having an identifiable national purpose, if you're living in this country, you want this country to be the best at what it is. So I'm saying, okay, let's ask me. I'm saying, in the absence of government deciding, I'm saying the national purpose must be to develop a champion nation, to be living in a champion nation. The key part is this. one thing is having your personal purpose and then identifying the national purpose. But how do you align your personal to the national? How do you align your personal purpose to the national purpose? If you do not align your personal purpose to the national purpose, then you are disconnected. It simply means, for example, if you're a medical doctor in your community and you've done well and you're earning well, thank Allah for that, but you're doing it for yourself and your family. How do you make the link between what you do and how does it impact the country? But you know what's the lousy part? You expect the same footballer or rugby player to do the same thing. You want Siya Kolisi to do well for his country and for himself, and then when he wins the World Cup for his country, it's like, look at what he does for the country. How are we not able to make that link to say, how can the Springboks become best in class at what they do and understand that that translates into what is best for the country? So I'm saying to you, we don't pay enough attention to what is our national purpose. We also don't pay enough attention to making the alignment to say personal must align with national. When we get 1 million people who understands the need to align the two, you suddenly know that whatever you do in your world has got a greater purpose beyond you, and it must impact on your country. Then you realize that actually I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier for my country. It doesn't have to be on the battlefield. You are in the battlefield of minds and ideas every single day.
And more importantly, you're a soldier with a direction.
Yeah, very much so. So I think that for me would be like a big takeout for people to say, come on, personal purpose, national purpose, align the two.
No, I love that. And in all honesty, I'm quite honestly very fascinated with that, because I don't think I've ever looked at it that way. And if you consider, as I mentioned on the show, I was a bit of a crossroads. And one of the things I had to find out is, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
And you realize that without it, you're wandering aimlessly. And I've never ever looked at it at that point of a country having a purpose, because you're probably right there. We look at what's happening in the country right now, and you spoke about corruption. Oh, this is wrong, X, Y, Z. But essentially, it's just that wandering aimlessly without that direction.
Yeah, and I can say this before we move on to other things. Listen, we have problems in our country as we have problems in many other countries in the world, right? But we also have some of the brightest minds, the greatest innovators in our country, and they straddle across the length and breadth of our society. White, black, colored, Indian, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hinduism, across the board, and they're from our country, man. Like, really, do we fully grasp what we've got in our hands?
No.
I do think sometimes we suffer from a self-esteem complex, a national self-esteem problem. That means we sell our country short all the time. A few weeks ago, I gave a talk at an event, and I asked them, well, before that, I said, what are we world-class at? And on social media, and the answers were the usual. We're world-class in corruption, we're world-class in crime, the things you didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I'm not saying that's not true, right? But in the day that I gave the talk, I decided to look back 2 weeks and look back at what South Africa achieved in 2 weeks globally. I was amazed. Like, really? That is the same time we won the Cricket World Test Championship, for example. But Lira won another music award. There was somebody else who did something in some cooking award. It just doesn't stop. So even when we think we do nothing, we actually do remarkable things. But we must get rid of that low self-esteem mentality. We must.
And it goes back to what you were mentioning. If we are not championing our country, we can't expect other people to do that.
Yeah, why would they do so?
Yeah, fully agree.
It can take 10 calls, and for you it can take 2 calls.
Yeah.
Now, this is not meant to say, I'm a big deal. It simply means it gives you the privilege in the same way that a Michael Schumacher, a brilliant motor racing driver, he could drive a Ford, no disrespect to Ford, but he jumps into a Ferrari and it gives him the privilege of winning a Formula One race. So the fact is, did he use the privilege? Yes. But how did he get to Ferrari in the first place? There's a track record that got him landing up there. So in the same way, the public spaces is that business card that gives you the privilege of cutting out the red tape to get to people, to connecting to people much quicker than many others.
You know, I love, you mentioned a few times, you know, not being egotistical. And I got to disagree with you. I don't think you are being, because I love the word that you used there, right? You used quite a few times the word privileged. And I really I noticed that, and I really loved it, because it shows that for you, it's not just that notch on a belt. It's not just that, oh, I got this on my CV that I can use one day.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like the mindset that people need to go in with, is that it is a privilege, and it's such a privilege being a part of such things like that. And going in with that mindset is what opens those different doors. So I really
Absolutely.
love the way you use the
Yeah.
word privilege there.
I mean, look, when we were at the One Young World event in Montreal in September of 2025, right? So there's 2,000 delegates, but the opening day is 10,000 people. There are 10,000 people there, right, on the opening day, and they call up all these different speakers. And they're from all around the world, okay, the speakers. But when you speak, there's 2,000. But when they call you up on the first day, they call you up according to your countries, right? So they call up 4 people on the stage at one time, and it's big, when they come up, it's like from South Africa. And to tell you, from South Africa, Professor Tuli Madonsela, right? Then Shodefatso, who won the Miss South Africa 2020, brilliant mind, right? The Beast, Tenda Matawarira, and Ashraf Garda. And you get on the stage, called up, and you feel so good about your country. Because in that moment in time, you're there, you understand, like, what am I doing here? Like, how did I land up here, right? But very quickly you also realize, because your flag is with you, it's like, I'm playing for my country. So like how you watch the rugby players represent their country, like I'm playing for my country. And that really is that privilege that you talk about. So how can you not be moved by being asked to represent your country in the best possible spaces in the world?
No, I love that. Brilliant. One of the things you mentioned there is paddle.
Yeah.
Right? This sport is, I mean, it just seemed like one day it wasn't there, and the next day you can't drive a couple of kilometers without seeing a paddle court, right? It's just blown up in the country. And as I understand it, you're quite passionate about the sport. You've recently also started the Padel News Network. Tell us about this passion that you've sort of gained for the sport, and how this has come about, and a little bit about the Padel News Network.
The Padel News Network, myself and my son Zaid started it with the idea that for us, you know, understanding media is low-hanging fruit. Zaid's in the digital space. He's got a photographic business, a videography, you know, between himself and his wife, and they do things in that space, so they know it. Myself, of course, knowing the media space, we understood that. So while others were talking about, build another court, and, you know, that's their space, right? We like, hold it, man. Let's create an Instagram account and see where that goes. And we did it for about a year at a certain level, until Zaid got more closely involved with it more than me, and I took more of a back seat, and changed the vision, really, from local to global, right? As a result of that, I mean, the account is just blown. It's certainly the largest account in South Africa, but you know, Padel is predominantly Spanish speaking, right? So there are big Spanish speaking accounts, but in the English speaking world, it's also one of the largest. It's hugely impactful. So and Zai can speak a lot more about it with authority because he's directly involved, you know, editing it, right? But we are in touch with, you know, associations from around the world because of the platform we have. But also, it's now large enough for us to monetize it. And, you know, it just shows you that the days of, you know, if you want to be in business, open up a corner shop and you can sell from the goods. We have a digital platform, which is real estate. It's digital real estate. So that's your shop, right? So now we're in a position where we're monetizing, where we're getting sponsors who want to be associated with us on the platform, associated with the audience that we have. And that's great. And that's what South Africa needs. And the beauty part is when we interact with people from around the world, many of them don't even know we are made in South Africa. You see, because you see, you can be made in South Africa, but you can make it around the world.
I love that. And I got to say, I'm smiling right now because I love the sort of symmetry, right? If you could look at it as two bookends, it's very, very similar to hey, there's the soccer league and nobody's broadcasting it, and there's a little bit of a need to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to start really small, and that sort of took off.
Yeah.
And here you are so many years later, hey, Padel is here, nobody really broadcasting it.
Yeah.
Why don't I set up something?
Yeah.
And it's taking off into a world
Exactly.
of its own. So
Exactly.
I love the symmetry
Yeah,
there
yeah.
from where you started.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it just shows you, I mean, there can be this golden thread through your life. Yeah.
No, absolutely. What message would you like people to take away from this interview today?
I'm going to repeat what we said earlier on because you were impacted by it, so why would I not repeat it for emphasis, which is this. Seriously, what is your purpose? What is the national purpose? How are you, I need to tell them that, how are you going to link or align your personal purpose to the national purpose? And linked to that, perhaps you should be answering this question. Like if I asked you this question, seriously, like how do you champion South Africa? So perhaps you can give us that answer. How do you champion South Africa? Hopefully they'll get the message.
I love it. Brilliant. Fully agree. So one tradition that we wanted to start here is we started this thing where we asked the previous guest to leave us a question for the next guest, not knowing who the next guest is going to be. Your question today is, what's a lesson that you learned during your early years, whether it be childhood or early broadcasting career, that you have to remind yourself more of in your later years?
So the lesson is to be aware of the small things lighties do, children, when they're growing up, and that they are revealing their skill set every single day, even though parents don't pick it up. So let me give you an example. When I was a lightie, when we used to play sport at home, or even you'd play like, you know, people are familiar with these board games like I think it's called Balina, the cricket game, right? Or with a dice and you throw. For some stupid reason, I would give commentary on the game. And then people just laugh. Because when I was a 7, 8-year-old kid, maybe 10 years old, not making the link between the obvious talent that was manifesting. Not in terms of how he's playing the game of cricket or whatever, but in terms of the broadcaster. So if there was one thing I would advise people, go back, look at yourself and look at children growing up and be very aware of the inherent skills they are displaying even now, which does not require any formal training, you know, to come to the fore. It's already there. So the question is then how then do you identify it as quickly as possible and then polish it up? I mean, put it this way. If a person's a top-class swimmer and you can see all the talent in the world and the person's 10 years old, do you say, okay, listen, study first, you know, get married, have children, when you're 30 or so and you're relaxing, let's talk about swimming again as a career. You're gone.
Yeah.
In a highly competitive world that we live in, and it is highly competitive, right? When a person's already, you've seen some inherent talent already, then besides their formal schooling, zone in on that talent now. And they're like, what can I do about it? So that's my advice. Identify it.
No, fully agree with that. Tiger Woods, perfect example.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I got to say, I'm very, very happy that you said that about commentating. Obviously, I'm of a little bit of a later generation, but we played a lot of PlayStation growing up. And one of the things I absolutely loved doing when I was playing PlayStation was commentating on the, we used to play FIFA, and I used to put the sound down all the way.
So that is more important to you than the game.
Yeah,
in fact.
absolutely. Same with cricket. So yeah, I'm hoping as I'm hearing that Ashraf Garda became this titan of industry that, hey, you know what, I used to commentate on some games as well.
Well, you're following the same trajectory, so there we are.
No, I love it. Lastly, before we end today, what's next for Ashraf Garda?
No, what's next? I mean, from a media perspective, I've dabbled in some podcasting, not enough. I need to revisit it. That's one. From a formal media, I mean, I don't know how long that will be. You know, I'm talking of like mainstream media. That's why the podcast is important. The Champion South Africa is the ultimate legacy for me. It's been defined by what I do. So what's next is to grow that, to realize its fullest potential. Because we can't talk about Champion South Africa and Champion Nation and not apply it in a champion way ourselves. and I honestly think we get some things right, but I think we're short. We're short in something. So that ultimately would be the biggest thing. Then from a pure paddle point of view, now that you mentioned it, I think to grow the Padel News Network even 10 times bigger than it is.
No,
Yeah.
hopefully. I got to say that I am, as I mentioned, a fan, and I really look forward to seeing what's going to happen next, and really look forward to following this journey as you
Yeah,
go
thank
along.
you. Well, look, you know what? I mean, perhaps in ending, and look, the champion team, as you can understand, dominates this conversation, right? But when we speak about national purpose, I've already mentioned a bit, like, what is my purpose? So for me, my purpose now, because it evolves, my purpose is to build champions as people. Because the champion people will build the champion nation. So if I can focus on building the champions, that's great. So really, what I try and do as much as I can every day is create some small opportunity for someone, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, to become one step better than what they are. And it could be, you know, an introduction. It could be something else, right?
Could be being a guest on somebody's podcast.
Well, you never know, yeah. But it could be, because I think South Africa, we must, you know, at the moment, we must find a seat at the table big enough to house everybody. Currently, we have 60 million people, and the table sometimes takes only 20 people, which means there's a complete inequality, lack of opportunity disconnect. How is it that we can have food on our tables, and then we see so many people hungry, and then we give them food, we say it's Ramadan, we must feed them. But we don't see that beyond the Ramadan food. We don't say, hold it. If we are able to create the table, build the table big enough to house 60 million people, which means 60 million opportunities, then we don't need to feed them anymore. They'll feed themselves. That inequality disconnect, which may well filter through Champion South Africa and everything else I've done, is something I want to pay more attention to. Yeah.
No. And as I mentioned, we look forward to seeing that happen, and we look forward to being, at least as a spectator, along for the journey.
Absolutely. And I mean, if I can just say this in ending, because it's important, you know, often when we talk about mainstream media and social media, we say, oh, it's good, or it's all bad, you know, that type of thing. And so I love using historical issues and then finding just the very common things that happen now. It's like, but you're not thinking like that. So let me give you an example. When we talk about mainstream media and social media and sharing, I'm not saying share every single thing of your life, no. But you can use social media as a critical platform to drive your purpose, to drive your own positioning as a person. You can do that, right? Now, you may say, really? So I said, let me give you an example. At the time of the final sermon, the Al-Wida sermon, what did the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He said many things. I won't go into that. But he did say one thing. He said, those who are here, tell those who are not here. Now you tell me, what does that mean? That's media. That's media, and that's social media in one line. Because at that stage, the full extent of their world was there. So you have a responsibility to go and tell those who are not here. You use different vehicles, whether it's word of mouth, whether it's social media, whether it's mainstream media. So I would like to think that communities, especially the Muslim community, which could be a major part of your audience, we must invest more and more in media and communications. Be the best speakers we can be in the mosques, in our social media platforms, in our mainstream media platforms, in our communication spaces, so that we can effectively replicate that sunnah of those who are here, go and tell those who are not here.
Absolutely agree with you. And I got to say, similar to what I've said before, I don't think a lot of people look at it that way. And I don't think, me included, I don't think I've ever looked at it that way. But 100%, that's essentially, right? Spread the message, spread the word. No, fully agree. Ashraf, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed having you on the show today. I just wanted to say on behalf of the entire family at Chat EbT, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. I'm going to use one of your words. It's been our absolute privilege to have you here.
But thank you for the invite, because by inviting me, you've given me a space, literally a seat at your table, And now I've had the privilege of expanding my views to a far bigger table, which is your audience. So shukran for that. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Our pleasure. All right, that's our show. Once again, thank you so much for joining us right here on Chat EBT. We hope you enjoyed today. Some excellent lessons, some inspirational stories. My name is Mohamed Ebrahim Tayob, and I'll catch you right here next time on Chat EBT.